Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This Day in Sports History. And welcome back to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Podcast Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sports. Learn more and find more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's June 15th, and on this day in 1938, Johnny Vander Meer did something no pitcher had done before or has been duplicated since. Vander Meer's Cincinnati Reds were in Brooklyn playing the Dodgers at Ebbets Field. It was a historic day because this was the first night game ever played at Ebbets Field. But it was about to become historic for a completely different reason. Vander Meer had pitched 4 days earlier against the Boston Bees. Quick side note, the Braves were actually the Bees for a 5-year stint, beginning in 1936 and ending in 1941. They were the Braves, rebranded the Bees in 36, and then back to Braves with a color change to their now familiar blue and red in 1941. Okay, now back to the regularly scheduled programming. Well, in that game with the Bees on the 11th, Vander Meer pitched 9 innings, struck out 4, walked 3, but did not allow a hit. On this night in 38, the 22-year-old Vander Meer had some issues with his control. He ended up walking 8, including 2 in the 7th. He was able to pitch around that minefield and induce ground ball outs to get out of the inning. In the 9th, more trouble finding the strike zone led to him walking the bases loaded with 1 out. The next Dodger grounded into a force at the plate, and then Leo DeRocher popped up to end the ball game for Vander Meer's second straight no-hitter. He struck out 7 on his way to baseball immortality. His feat has never been duplicated. 2 have come close, though. In 1947, Vander Meer's teammate Ewell Blackwell pitched 8 1/3 innings of no-hit ball, interestingly enough against the Brooklyn Dodgers, after throwing a no-hitter in his previous start. And then in 1973, Nolan Ryan, pitching for the California Angels at that time, took a no-no into the 8th against Baltimore after throwing a no-hitter in his previous start. It was Mark Belanger breaking up that attempt to equal Vander Meer. In 2008, it was one of those dramatic Tiger Woods moments that you just came to expect to see. Final round of the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines in San Diego, Tiger hobbled to the par 5 18th tee, needing a birdie to tie and force an 18-hole playoff with Rocco Mediate the following day. Tiger had played the entire tournament in pain, walking on an injured knee. But here he was in the final pairing with Lee Westwood with a chance. But Tiger didn't really do himself any favors, hitting his tee shot into a fairway bunker, then hitting his second shot in the rough, leaving about a 110-yard shot to a front pin. His third shot was good, leaving him with a 12-foot putt for birdie, but it was not really the spot that Tiger wanted to be in. He said later that it was the worst part of the green. It was bumpy down there. And he watched as Lee Westwood made his putt attempt to join the playoff, but his putt came up a little short. Woods then told himself to commit to the putt. It was 2.5 balls outside right, and he just had to hit it. And of course, he did. In true Tiger fashion, he sank the putt to force the playoff. Nobody really knew what to expect the next day, though. With the U.S. Open, it's still a full 18-hole playoff to decide a winner. Would Mediate fold? Could Tiger handle another 18 holes on his injured knee? Well, the answers would be no, Mediate would not fold, and yes, Tiger could make it. The two were still all square after the Monday 18-hole playoff, and then played sudden death, with Tiger winning on the 19th playoff hole. It was later revealed that Tiger had played the entire tournament on a torn ACL. This was the last tournament he played in 2008 and turned out to be his last major win until his surprising Masters win in 2019. In 1976, a game at the Houston Astrodome was rained out. let me let that sink in for you. The Astrodome had a rainout. Okay, there's actually a reasonable explanation for this one, and no, it wasn't a leaky roof. Instead, the Houston area was deluged with rain. Estimates between 7 and 10 inches throughout the day flooded the area around the Astrodome, including the parking areas and the entrance ramps into the park. The field was dry, but nobody could get in. Could they have played the game that day? Probably. The Astros players and the Pittsburgh Pirates were both inside already. The umpires weren't there yet, but they could have figured something out to get them inside. But the Astros knew if they played the game, fans would attempt to come to the park, and that could put them in danger. So instead, it went down in the books as postponed due to rain. The concessions folks who had made it to the park set up a buffet table at second base, and the teams ate dinner together on the field. There were even a few fans who managed to canoe to the dome, who were allowed in to have dinner with the players as well. On this day in 2004, it was an upset that led to a dismantling of a once powerhouse team. The Detroit Pistons beat the Los Angeles Lakers in Game 5 of the NBA Finals to win their first championship since the Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Vinnie Johnson days of 1990. The final was 100-87, and Chauncey Billups became the first MVP of a championship series that had not been an All-Star that season since 1989, when Detroit's Joe Dumars pulled off that feat. But the story was really about the Lakers, who had been heavy favorites to win their 13th NBA title. This was a dysfunctional family, though. Phil Jackson left and later wrote in his book that Kobe was uncoachable. Shaq was traded to Miami after this one. Rick Fox and Gary Payton were shipped to Boston. Derek Fisher left. Karl Malone, who had joined this team in the hopes of finally winning a championship, well, he was willing to stick around until Kobe accused him of hitting on his wife. He retired in December saying, "This is a Hollywood soap opera, and I'm not going to be a star in another Bryant soap opera." It would be another 4 years before the Lakers would return to the finals, and 5 before they would win it again. And several summer blockbuster movies with sports tie-ins were released on this day in different years. In 1967, The Dirty Dozen was released in theaters on this day. Cleveland running back and actor Jim Brown played a role in this World War II-era film about a group of convicts attacking a French chateau filled with Nazi officers. Brown had been in Europe shooting the movie, but filming ran long, and Brown was needed back in Cleveland to get ready for the upcoming season. Jim said he would return when shooting was done on the movie. When Brown's owner, Art Modell, told Brown he would be fined $1,000 for every day he missed in training camp, Jim told Art to stuff it and retired from football instead at the age of 30. Also, Rocky II debuted in theaters on this day in 1979. It ended up grossing $200 million and was named Best Picture at the American Movie Awards. And Bull Durham, starring Kevin Costner, Susan Sarandon, and Tim Robbins, hit movie screens on this day in 1988. Time now for today's non-sports Did You Know? And let's keep the movie theme going for this one. If you make a drinking game out of the number of times the word dude is said in The Big Lebowski, take little sips. It's said 160 times. Oh, and the dude drinks 9 White Russians throughout the film. That's all for today. I'll have more tomorrow on This Day in Sports History. This Day in Sports History is a member of the Sports History Podcast Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sports. Learn more and find more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.